Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. I'm Kirsty and this is Stuck in the Mud. Thank you for joining me here today and taking this step on your road to recovery from OCD and anxiety. As always, please remember to like the videos if you're finding them helpful and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. So in today's video, I want to talk about sneaky hidden OCD compulsions. You know, these might be keeping you stuck in the same cycles, and OCD compulsions aren't always obvious to us, and we sometimes start to just adopt them as our personality traits or habitual behaviours, but they can be keeping us stuck where we don't want to be. We don't want to be stuck in that OCD washing machine cycle, and they can actually make us feel worse. One of those compulsive behaviours that we don't automatically see it that way as compulsive is rumination. And this is a real big one. And this is going to keep you stuck where you just really don't want to be with OCD. And we don't always realise we're doing it. It can feel quite automatic. You know, we get that intrusive thought, that image, that sensation in the body, or that urge to do something. And we can analyze everything, you know, our thoughts, our memories, we're mentally reviewing everything. You know, it does have a compulsive element to it. We're actually thinking, you know, we're doing something. It takes effort, and it's not your fault. We don't always realize that we're actually participating in it. But, you know, thoughts happen to us, you know, that we can't control thoughts that pop into our head. You know, as an OCD person, someone who's experienced it through many years, we're very plugged into the world and everything that goes on. And everyone does have a negative bias, especially people that have OCD. So we tap into all these things that are happening around the world and in our environment. And, you know, they pop up, these negative, sometimes abhorrent, violent, sexual thoughts, you know, any theme, whatever it may be, they pop up into our heads, and we automatically want to do all these behaviours, these compulsive behaviours, this rumination, you know, this trying to figure everything out, trying to just review everything and trying to come to some kind of certainty or conclusion about why we are even thinking this. You know, we feel guilty and shameful for even thinking a so-called bad thought. And we are not trying to stop these thoughts, because that would infer that something is wrong with it being there. And it's not. Any thought is allowed. That was always my mantra in recovering from OCD and anxiety. You know, any thought is allowed. It doesn't mean anything about you. It doesn't define who you are. And, you know, we really get stuck on this because we just want complete certainty that this just isn't who we truly are. You know, we crave it. It's like a desperation to figure it out. But all we're doing is feeding into it, because with the more importance we give it, the more we engage with it, our brain will just hang on to it longer. That's the total opposite of what we actually want to do. We want to starve OCD of what it wants, the attention it wants from us. And the way we do that is by leaving those thoughts alone, as hard as that is. And it takes a lot of courage and hard work and consistency to practice this. But every time and we bring awareness to it and we're like, yep, I know what's going on here. I'm getting involved. I'm trying to figure this out. You know, we go, no, we'll let that be there. Let it hang out for as long as it wants, and it will fade away on its own. Because we want to take the power away from OCD and, you know, and gain some control over our thinking, our rumination, the overthinking patterns. Like I say, thoughts happen. We can't control them. It just doesn't work. Anyone that tries to control thoughts, it's not going to work. You can't control them because they will just keep popping up. You know, we're teaching our brain every time we try and control the thoughts and say, like, no, I don't want to think this, you know, I need to go away. We're just telling our brain to hang on to it because we're giving it importance. That's the difference. Whereas when we just have a relaxed awareness that it's there, you know, like I said, they don't define us. It doesn't have any reflection on our true character, because OCD goes after our true values. It does. It goes after what it knows will hurt us the most. So having that relaxed awareness of its presence there, and just moving forward with our day, and in that courageous way, like, yeah, you're there, that's fine. You just hang out as long as you want. I'm going to do what I need to do today. So the more we dwell and the more we hunt for answers, finding evidence, it just keeps us stuck in those repetitive behaviours, and there's other things as well that can be sneaky with OCD, and it can be a lot of physical behaviours as well, and that can be like checking, counting, blinking, the way we breathe, touching, tapping. It's a big one for me when I was younger, making certain sounds or saying things in response to the interpreted fear. We're just arguing with it. Whereas this is all engagement, and this is where we don't want to be. We can do ordered routines or different actions. These are all physical things that we might not actually realize we're always doing them. So again, bringing that awareness to it and then doing something about it and not engaging with it, not giving it importance, and just taking that leap of faith not to actually carry it out. I used to do things like, and I did it for many years, and it even carried on after I was so much better, where the way I would say put a pair of pants on, I'd have to do the right leg first and then the left leg. And I found myself doing it with my kids. When I was getting them ready, I'd put the right leg first and then the left. I had to do it in that certain order because there was, even though it may have become habitual over years to do it that way, there's obviously still a tiny belief there that is, that's keeping me safe, keeping them safe, or whatever it may be. There's a little belief system there that we need to break down, and we do that by not doing it. And I had to get myself out of that, of doing certain behaviours that were still hanging around after some time. They weren't necessarily making me really anxious or anything, but we're just breaking it down, breaking OCD down and taking back that control. So just being aware of those little behaviours that we may still be doing. I may also, another example for me would have been, I used to fear saying something bad, blurting out something terrible to someone and offending them or, deeply hurting them. It really would upset me, because that's not who I am, but I feared that it would just come out and I'd have no control over it. So I would pass someone in the street, for example, and I would hold my mouth tightly shut. So I feel like I'd have some recollection that I couldn't have said something bad because my mouth was so tightly shut. So again, that's another physical behaviour that I was engaging in. Other sneaky ones, and this is a big one I think for most people, is Googling. Googling is just the worst. I think we'd all agree. It is so readily available there. Just if we're feeling fearful, anxious about something, we Google for reassurance. And, that is just, it's going down the rabbit hole. You're not going to come to anything good with Google. It's the problem with it is having that restraint and not to engage with it when we get those intrusive thoughts and we want to come up with an answer quickly. And we feel like maybe we don't want to do that with family members because they will be aware that we're seeking that reassurance, and then it's the friend that will always help you out because they're not going to answer back. Unfortunately, they do answer back. Google answers back in a big way and gives us a lot of wrong information as well. So we can't rely on that, and we have to have that self-restraint to kind of not engage with Google in that way. We may find ourselves doing it when we're not realising that we're actually doing it, but that is actually a compulsion for OCD and not a helpful one. And going into asking for reassurance, we do that with friends and family. I think with my husband, he realised when I was doing that, he would know that I'm asking for reassurance, so wouldn't engage with me. And it's really good to educate family members on this, that, you can say, like, if I ask, please don't tell me, if you know that I'm seeking reassurance, do not answer me, because it's not going to help me in the long run. It helps initially because you'll feel some respite from the anxiety, but it really is about sitting with that discomfort, with getting better from OCD. And as hard as that is, it really is a step that we have to take. And it gets easier, believe me, all of this gets easier with practice. You know, I'm going through this for a long time, and I know what really truly does work in the long run to get you on that path to recovery. Another one we may not realize we're doing is avoidance, and we may do sneaky things like asking other people to check things or do things for you so that you don't have to sit with that uncertainty. We're not putting ourselves out there because we have a lot of doubt, and we don't want that all on us, all that responsibility. And I am guilty of that. I've asked my husband on many occasions over the years to check the cooker, things like that, because I was so scared that I would leave it on, or I turned it on purpose. Just, that's what my OCD did for a long time. You know, it wasn't the worst one I've ever kind of gone through with OCD, but it was there, you know, and I would ask him can you just check it for me, even though I've just checked it, so I'm not sitting with that discomfort. But we have to sit with that discomfort, and that is part and parcel of getting better. And it's just another thing that we may not realize is actually making our OCD worse. And another thing, I would say, sneaky things are mind games that OCD will play with us. I can be watching a scenario play out, and I will be like, well, if this happens next, then that's fine. But if something else happens, then something bad will happen, you know. And I've engaged with those kind of mind games over many years. And it's just being aware that when that happens and when you're engaging with that, instead of just letting that be there, like when that kind of question pops up in your head, like, you know, well, what about this? It doesn't matter. We leave it alone. We let it be there for as long as it wants. It will fade out on its own. Sitting with that discomfort, even though it doesn't feel good, is really the key here to getting better. So I really hope that some of these sneaky things that you may not realize is OCD actually helps you to progress in your road to freedom from this disorder. So let me know in the comments any other sneaky behaviours that you may have engaged in, how this relates to you. It'd be really great to hear from you and let me know. So I will see you next time. Thanks so much for watching, guys.